Everyone, welcome to the second ever City Hindus Network Career Clinic. This one we're going to cover several key themes. Tarang and I are both from the asset management business, both private equity, and I'm going to cover a bit about hedge funds. So there's that whole area of getting into that. But actually more broadly than that, and I think, Tarang, you've just shared the screen as well. More broadly than that, we're going to talk about career resets, changing careers, building your brand, and so on. And Tarang is on our advisory board as well. In fact, he's been on our board before I was on and involved with CHN. So he's been there for, I think, over a decade is when you first started. I'm going to let Tarang introduce himself, but most of you will have seen the introductions. And like I said, he's going to speak a bit. I'm going to put in my advice as well. We're going to show you some resources that you can use, give our own advice from our own expertise. And on top of all of that, we're going to do a Q&A as well for everyone. So, Tarang, do you want to kick off? You've got your screen up there, and then I will drop in with my comments as well.
Yes, Alpesh, thank you. Very happy to do that. By means of background, Cambridge graduate, 5 years in consulting, 10 years in investment management, and then today I run my own business, helping fast-growing businesses with their marketing and fundraising. Let me kick off maybe with a quote from the Gita, chapter 3, verse 35, which is, "It is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else with perfection." So while we are here today to tell you about our journeys and some of the lessons that we have learned along the way to make your journeys easier, we are by no means perfect ourselves, and we've had our ups and downs as well. So as with Ekta and Nish last week, Alpesh and I grew up without mentors in the industry. And the idea really here for us is to try and give back as much as we can and hope to initiate two-way dialogues. We leave some time for Q&A throughout and at the end, but feel free even afterwards to reach out to us at the CHN. And if we can help you with mentorship, Alpesh, myself, and a whole bunch of other people in different fields, we'd be very, very happy to. So let me start off with that. The way that we've structured today really is a bit chronologically based on what we saw last time in terms of the people who turned up, which was roughly 1/3 university students, 1/3 people who are younger in their career, and then 1/3 people who are later in their career and perhaps are looking to rejuvenate and do something a bit differently. And Alpesh and I have had that sort of a journey throughout ourselves as well. And so we structured it in 6 different parts, starting with university, then moving on to hard and soft skills, moving on to giving and taking from your career, the role of ego, addiction to success, a quick note on mentorship, and then moving on to how do you rejuvenate and start over if you have to do that. So maybe if I start chronologically and walk you through sort of my journey and how some of this played in, and I'll throw it back to Alpesh at the end of every section for his thoughts on his journey. So does the choice of university matter? We got this question a little bit last time. Alpesh and I were fortunate enough both to go to Oxford and Cambridge. But my sense is that in the medium term, it doesn't. I think for me, certainly Cambridge helped open certain doors for interviews early days. But as I got through my career a little bit and I started to hire myself, I almost had a little bit of a bias against Oxford and Cambridge because we used to get a lot of people who were very philosophical who came from Oxford and Cambridge, while I found from London universities, you had people who were willing to just keep the head down and work super hard, which is what a lot of employers want in your early days. So if you have tried to get into a red brick university, if you haven't got in, you've gone somewhere else, that certainly by no means in the medium term is an issue. I mean, certainly, like I said, when I used to hire, I had a preference for other universities. So don't get disheartened if you've not got into your first choice university. I think particularly now during COVID, it's harder and harder, and we've seen the whole disaster with the A-levels and GCSE results and so forth. The key bit over here is don't get disheartened and keep pushing on, because ultimately it's your talent and your hard work and a bit of luck which will determine your success. So certainly don't get disheartened by your choice of university. As you might know, Bill Gates didn't qualify from university, Richard Branson didn't, Michael Dell didn't, Steve Jobs didn't. So you've got a whole bunch of people who haven't got a great background from that perspective. Throughout, of course, this is the City Hindu Network, so we'll talk about the Hindu perspective on things. I think sometimes in this case, I would say the Indian mentality recently can be a hindrance because of this over focus on achievement in the very material sense. And so I think a lot of us get caught up with what university have you gone to? I think over here, sometimes our Indian upbringing is a bit of a hindrance. But remember to push past that. Remember to focus on the lessons of the Gita, which is your job is to keep doing your duty, to keep working hard, keep trying hard, and let the results come. And don't get disheartened by the early start in your career. So my takeaway over here is work hard, try and get into the best university that you can. But if you don't get your top outcome, don't really worry. Just keep pushing on for your first job. Alpesh, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I reiterate all of that. I mean, look, it was fantastic having the leg up that Oxford, or in your case, Cambridge gives you. And it's great, but there's no point, and not just even that, but whatever else might come in life, there's no point crying over spilled milk. Whatever's happened, and it could be something else in your life. You might not have got into Goldman Sachs. You might not have gone to your first choice job. The key focus throughout, the most successful people I've met be the ones who've just been relentless. Those are the people, like you said, Tarang, when I'm hiring, those are the people that I want to hire. I actually don't care what's on their CV other than I want to see relentlessness. And when I meet them, I want to see likability because I've got to work with them. And that's really underestimated. I was speaking to somebody this weekend who's been hiring, and she had people on the one hand who had the sort of alpha male CV, ticked all the boxes, investment banker, just achievement, achievement, achievement. And she had two, and it happened to be women, who were looking at the same post, and they were far more likable. They were going to be easier to work with, and they were going to be more team players, she felt, going to be less disruptive, less difficult. Guess who got the jobs? It was actually the ones whose CVs weren't totally glowing. And many of the people here, I mean, I've had rejections, I think, from every single major UK institution, which is why, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, the career pivot for me went from being a barrister to entrepreneurship and setting up my own firm. But we'll talk about that in a second, and being able to do that. And like you said, in our culture, you know, it's a bit of a, well, my grandmother used to say, she goes, well, haven't you just wasted all your legal education? You're now going to do something completely different. And what we can see now, the world has well moved away from that, and people don't have the well-trodden career path. In fact, they're very often miserable in the careers that they were on the conveyor belt to. How do they switch those? So we'll touch upon that as well. Tarang, I know. I'll hand back to you.
Super. Okay. So the second one, which is balancing hard skills and people skills, and I said I would talk about this chronologically. So for myself, it was the early 2000s that I went to university. It was when I took on my first job with PwC, and frankly, before that, my internship with JP Morgan, where I learned the whole people skills side of things. I grew up in a very traditional Indian family where it was all about head down, focus on the grades, work hard, and if you do all of that, then you'll get rewarded by success. Again, a question that came up last time for the session that was run by Ekta and Nish, which was, how does that balance off with what you really need to do to be successful? And Alpesh talked about likability. And I think that factor really comes into play. And we sometimes under focus on that as a culture. It is super important to do that piece, as a number of you early in your career will have seen. That there are other cultures who focus much more on that, on the people skills, on networking and so forth. And those people tend to do quite well. I certainly found that when I was at JP Morgan doing my internship, keeping my head down, working on some very complicated pricing models, doing Black-Scholes and all of that, ultimately it didn't get recognized as much as some of the people who balanced that with also causing up to the senior staff and going to the drinks events and making networks like that. Those were the people who were known as people. And frankly, as you grow through any organization, business development becomes a bigger and bigger part of your job. And so it's not just an unfair bias. They're actually looking for people who can not just do the hard work, but can also sell and market and generate new business. So I think it's super important to do that. At PwC, I had a different challenge. I found people who were more senior to me, who I thought were not academically as gifted as me. And that bothered me, that I was delivering academically better quality work, but quite often they would take the credit for doing all of that and for leading all of that. And again, that was a tough lesson learned for me coming from a traditional Hindu background. So I think my takeaways on this particular section is, work hard, make sure the quality of your work is extremely good, but at the same time, make sure that people know what you're doing, talk to them about it, ask them for advice. People love giving advice. So go ahead and do all of that and speak to people around the organization and outside. If you go through a phase where it gets frustrating because of the caliber of people around you, and you don't think you're around the greatest company, if you think you're being unfairly dealt with, and that your work is not being fully recognized. Again, speak to your mentors, and we'll come back to the roles of mentors later on. But certainly, it's something that historically I didn't do a great job of. I very much tried to figure things out by myself. Going to people who've done this, been there, seen the politics, and all of that is sometimes quite helpful, as it's helpful to have somebody who's outside the bubble that you are in. And so do speak to people outside of that, and you will get some good advice around that. So don't get frustrated, keep pushing on, and play the people side as well as the hard skills. Just one little caveat before I hand over to Alpesh is, as it comes to people skills, the ugly side of the same coin is the politics. And so one of the questions we get quite often is, how do you deal with the politics within an organization without giving up your moral boundaries? And I think there it's very important to know what your moral boundaries are. For me, as I started to use the people side a bit more, the two things that I always told myself, one was always be fully aware of what the politics are, just because you don't want to be caught offside for the wrong reasons. So be fully aware. It's a bit like what they say in Hinduism, be in the world, but not of the world. So be totally aware of what's going on, but try and avoid yourself getting involved in petty politics. The second thing that I would say is, it's okay to use your contacts and networks as and when you need them, and as and when you need to lean on them. And for me, the boundary there was, it's okay to do that as long as I'm not harming somebody else career-wise or emotionally. It's okay to use your own contacts for your own benefit. But certainly you guys might have different, guys and girls might have different boundaries. I would say it's really important to set those moral boundaries as you go and deal with the people side of things. Alpesh?
Yeah, on the people side of stuff, I was asked a couple of years ago by the UK government to speak to one of the major departments. I think it was the Department for Transport. And it was to talk about how to make disparate teams work together, diverse teams, how to make them work effectively. And because I'd been working within government for a while, they'd asked me to do this because occasionally I'd been rolled out to deal with difficult people. I don't know why they think I deal better with difficult people. I think I'm probably one of the most difficult people anyway, but maybe that's why. They asked me about this. And one of the slides, I'm going to just show you a slide that I presented to the government department. And this is based on research from Harvard Business School. And let me just share with you screen 8. And would you believe it is actually research which shows that those with charisma succeed. Now, we're not talking, this is not Anthony Robbins, this is Harvard Business School. If you want to look up the research, it's by an author called Atonakis, okay, Harvard Business Review. And some of the issues, and we won't go into all of them here, but they found that leaders or people within a team who had the characteristics of charisma, and you might ask, what the hell is charisma? How can I even learn this? Especially if I'm a wallflower and I like sitting in the corner and you know, I just want to be able to do my Black Scholes, my Excel spreadsheets. What the hell's all this nonsense for me in my career to move up? Well, what they found is, and you can see some of the things that we discussed in the talk that I'd given them about metaphors and analogies. This is all coming from research that they've done. But more importantly, let me put it this way, and I'll summarize it in this way. It was the people who'd set the higher expectations for themselves. So they'd looked into and researched dress, demeanor. They conveyed confidence in those goals and that they could be achieved. So they weren't just talking small time stuff. They were able to inspire others. Believe it or not, they even analyzed body gestures such as what I'm doing now, hand movements, and they compared people, and you can do this with TED Talks, employees who were more gesticulating than ones which weren't. You might, well, that's rubbish, that's so superficial. In actual fact, it was people who were perceived as more likable, more likely to succeed, and people wanted to attach themselves to those individuals, people who had facial expressions, weren't boring as hell, basically. And one of the unfortunate things I often find very frustrating is, whether it's Hindus or anything else, and it might be cultural to us, is the frustration when I see very talented people academically not get ahead. And we all know it happens in all cultures. And the ones who aren't so good get well ahead because they talk a good game, and we sneer at them and go, well, they're just all mouth. They haven't really got any substance there. Well, if you've got the substance, you better start being able to market it and learn a bit more about charisma. Research that article by Atonakis. Research this whole element, which the softer skills that you mentioned, Tarang, which people often do forget about. So just wanted to add that bit there to what you were saying.
Super. Let me switch back to my screen. So next topic here is giving and taking from your career. This is another one which people struggle with quite often, and particularly I think young female mentees of mine, not just necessarily from the Hindu culture, but across the board, struggle about the taking part, which is at what point do you start asking your employer to look after you as well? And different people are at different extremes on this. You know, some people, particularly some of the younger folks I've worked with recently, want to ask a lot more before they give enough. And then there are other people who give a lot and are very shy to say what's in it for me. So I think that balance is really, really important. I mentioned, younger people, in particular, females who sometimes struggle with this. One of my mentees recently came up to me and said, Taz, look, I want to get promoted to the next level up. I just don't know how to build a case, and I don't know if I'm good enough to do that job. This not good enough piece particularly comes in more and more as that conversation happens. And then the same thing for bonuses. You know, how much can we negotiate? How do we go around with the negotiation? Should we just take what we're given? All of that comes in quite a lot. And the feedback that I've had often for people over there is, I think particularly here, women, is it's okay to ask for more. Get your employers to put down what it is that they expect of you on paper, and then go about making sure that you're achieving all of that, which makes that conversation very much more results and data based. So I think it is important to both give and take. In my own journey, when I joined PwC, one of the discussions that we had in our group, I was on the advisory side, is how come the tax people and how come the people who are doing audit get the ACAs paid for and we don't get any qualifications on the other side? And we get paid a bit more, but not so much more. So we all decided as a group to go and negotiate with the partners over there, and we got our CFAs paid for by PwC. And then along the way, every now and then, after I'd spent a year, 2 years doing hard work for PwC, I would go back to them and say, hey, look, I've done some good work over here. Here's how I want to expand my career. So for example, I started off in the strategy consulting part of PwC, which was great. It was a lot of hard work, helping companies with some really big problems to solve. But I was missing a little bit of the data and the analytics. So I said, look, can I spend half my time doing valuations? I promise you I won't let the strategy side go, and I'll keep doing a great job. I'll work 16 hours a day, but I really want to learn more on the analytical side of things. And that ultimately actually helped me build and grow a business for PwC in the private equity and venture capital valuations part, which then served me well when it came to my next role. So keep hustling and, work hard. We always work hard as a community, but work hard. But also don't forget to ask for your next step in the career. As long as your conversations are decent and helpful and productive and are good, not just for yourself, but for the business, your business leaders will also get it. Likewise, keep thinking about, is this business still right for me? In my case, was PwC still serving me spiritually, intellectually, academically, financially? Or did I need to move on and do something different? So keep challenging yourself every now and then. Don't get frustrated. Keep the emotions away from those decisions, but make sure you're not just giving and not taking back, and vice versa. Make sure you're not asking for too much without showing the results. Alpesh?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely perfect. I'm going to link it to what we mentioned on the hard and soft skills and how to get ahead with the government work that I've been doing. I mean, I sometimes consider it like a bank balance. If I've made a lot of deposits and built up equity with the people I'm working with, whoever the parties might be, and UK government's one example, then you are able to show a bit of initiative. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Before I do, I'm going to show you a couple more slides I've got on the issue of asking for things, but using some of the things that I mentioned in the last segment about hard and soft skills. And it's this: what do the following statements have in common? Okay, research suggests executives with squarer, more angular faces, would you believe, fare better in salary negotiations compared to rounder face, that's me, equally competent colleagues. True for men or women. You might think, like, well, this is one reason why I cycle a lot more. I'm trying to get that angular face before I ask for the money. My point is, I'll come to that in a second, what the point is. Same thing, what does this statement have in common? A recent study found that the most watched TED Talks on topics such as leadership are made by presenters who use twice as many hand gestures as those who present on similar topics, but are less animated. Okay, there's a few more examples of that, but I'll cut to the chase in the interest of time. And that's something which a company had asked me to do. They'd asked me to be would you believe, a brand ambassador. I got to tell you, this whole millennial thing where, the Instagram culture where you can be brand ambassador, you get paid for your face. I love it. It's stupid. You get paid for just showing up. What is it? What do all those things have in common? Well, it is that hard messengers, whilst they're the ones who possess data, and we all want to keep that hard messenger aspect, research shows 4 important traits that contribute to status-driven messenger success is socioeconomic position, you expect, competence, and we're not underplaying that by any means, dominance and attractiveness. Okay, what the hell does dominance and attractiveness mean? People are, for instance, are less likely to honk at somebody in a higher status car. Well, what the heck does all of that mean? Well, it means things like your dress sense will matter, but it's something else. It also means that the messenger is what matters, not just the message. What you're getting across to your boss, it does matter how you come across, how you look, those softer skills that we mentioned. And one last slide on this, and this is from PhD research, which goes back to that. If you're going to be asking for something, think about that makeover. I know it sounds stupid, and we did this experiment with somebody very close to me. I'm not going to save her blush, she's not going to mention who it was. We had a complete wardrobe change. 2 weeks later, she got promoted. Now, I don't know if one and the other thing were linked, and you might think it's incredibly superficial when we started off this whole talk talking about Oxford and Cambridge and studies, but I'm afraid these things do make a difference. They make an absolute difference. Your voice, your tone. If you need to, go to elocution lessons. I took them, okay, when I was about 17. Because they do make a difference. Otherwise, all the qualifications in our community on every single ranking for education always comes at the top. But I bet you on charisma, on terms of the softer skills, they don't. I bet you they don't, time and time again. So that's one aspect. The other thing is, just on this issue you mentioned about give and take. Like I said, with the government, having built up what I thought was done some good work with them, bringing inward investment into the UK, I said, well, look, guys, I want to do something different. And that's, for me, that's the closest I could get to a promotion. What I said is, I want to now work to bring companies which are the ones I pick based on how important those companies are to solving the world's biggest problems. Now, that's the equivalent of me asking for a pay rise. But you're able to do that when, like I said, you've built up some goodwill with them. But not only that, you're able to, so I created this website to show them what I mean, okay, to show some initiative. You show them the business plan for what you want to do. You don't just ask for something. You show them why it's going to be better for them, why it's helping them as well. And when you're able to show that, they say, right, this guy's got enthusiasm, energy. He's shown us how this is going to work. He's shown us why it's going to be better for us. Yeah, let's give him the role to do it. Those are the essential steps, together with the passion, the energy, the vision. All of those things are needed. And what I'd say, going right back to the start of what we said at this webinar, where some people are doing career pivots, if you are looking at entrepreneurship, this whole thing, by the way, for the government was created for people looking for entrepreneurship. So just as an aside, do have a look at this. It's completely free, and it was created for the government, totally free. For those who are thinking, do I actually even want to have a job? Do I want to go to my boss for a pay rise? I want to create my own pay rise. So for all entrepreneurs, we created all of this so they can find every single source of funding in the UK, from every UK angel group, VC, crowdfunding. Tarang and I are in private equity. So from all the big venture capital firms as well, and loans, grants, all of those sources of funding. If you want to just pivot away out of all of it, and Tarang, you're an entrepreneur now, you've got your own advisory firm as well. So you've pivoted. I've pivoted because I pivoted from being a barrister into moving into the world of entrepreneurship. So again, this is for those who are thinking, well, actually, you don't need to have that. Just because it was Oxford, Cambridge, and it wasn't the bar, it wasn't medicine, wasn't accountancy, and it was moving into the same fields as those awful dropouts, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett, 3 dropouts for you right there, who left and pivoted into running their own businesses instead. I'll hand back to you, Tarang.
Yeah, thank you, Alpesh. I'll just take off quickly on your point about elocution lessons, which is interesting because I also went to something called Toastmasters, which is all about public speaking. They put you on the spot and they ask you questions and you have to just go and answer them straight away. You have to prepare speeches and deliver them. My brother took acting classes. So I think it is really important because, again, as a community, we do really well in terms of getting the hard skills right, but it is equally important to be able to sell, to market, to talk meaningfully and in a way that's engaging with the audience as well. So I think I would absolutely recommend do that side because it is super key.
Yeah, and we've created in City Hindu's network, City Hindu's Voice, which if anybody goes to our website and then looks under the events page, they'll see it. In fact, let me just share that with you. Where what we're doing is we're encouraging people. We're encouraging people. Let me just share the right page. We're encouraging people to share their voice, create little videos. So you go under events and then City Hindu's Voice there. We want you to create videos for us on anything you feel passionate about, and we're teaching you how to do it. Okay, so that you learn how to create that message that you want to get across to people, whatever it is that makes you impassioned, and it'll hopefully help build your brand as well. Because if you're posting it on social media and LinkedIn as an expert in whatever field, it could be, I don't know, it could be blockchain, it could be whatever area you're in, finance, you might have certain issues that you are concerned about. It doesn't have to be Hinduism related, but again, getting that voice out, getting that ability to express yourself helps in everything from your career to the pay rises and everything else. Back to you, Tarang.
Thank you. So section 4, the role of the ego and addiction to success. Let me kick off with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. It is nature that causes all movement. Deluded by ego, the fool harbors the perception that says, I did it. Now, we all grow up being told to stay humble, and it comes from our scriptures, it comes from our backgrounds, it comes from our culture, our religion, all of the above. And it's something that I think helps our community more so than others in terms of staying absolutely grounded when things go, when you start to become successful. In my own journey, I talked about giving and taking. At the end of the last decade, I decided PwC was no longer serving me. It had been a great journey, but I really wanted to go and explore and do something else with the skill sets that I'd learned over there. And so I joined a business called Hamilton Lane, which was already super established in the US, asset management, investing in private equity and venture capital. And in the US, they were already over 100 billion, over 100 people. In Europe, it was a tiny organization. It was about 10 people when I joined them. And what was exciting about that role was the ability to help them grow as a business. So not just go and invest on their behalf to find the right investments and to partner up with those people and make the investment decisions, but also to go and develop the business itself, hire the right people, put in the right systems, the processes, and so forth, which was super duper exciting. And I had a great almost decade with them. I'd like to think I was quite humble. You know, I was traveling to Dubai and New York and Europe every week, and I was doing a lot of interesting meetings, staying in the best hotels, eating the best food, and it was easy to let that get to your head. I think I did a pretty decent job in terms of staying grounded. And again, that Bhagavad Gita quote really helped in terms of continuing to know, as I used to say to people, that life and success is determined in 3 equal parts: by talent, which you're given. It's not something that you can necessarily develop a lot. You can improve on it, but it's either there or there. It's not. Hard work, which you can fully control. That's the 1/3 that you can control. And then the final 1/3 is, call it destiny, call it God, call it luck, whatever it is. And so a fair chunk of your success is out of your control. The bit that you can control is what you want to control. And so everything else is something that's out of your control, and you have to be thankful that you've been given all of those opportunities. I did a decent job of that. The lesson I learned, the bit that was hard for me when I ultimately gave that job up and became an entrepreneur, is that I was actually feeding my ego in a very different way, which is the fact that I stayed grounded, being called Mr. Nice Guy of private equity, all of that stuff had started to become something that I got used to. And I used to take for granted, even though I wasn't bad about it, I used to take for granted the fact that I'll always be flying business class to different locations and so forth. And so a bit of that lifestyle and a little bit of that Mr. Nice Guy reputation started to rub off on me, and I started to become proud of it in a slightly negative way. It fed my ego. And so I'll come back to the next, or at least the 6th part of this, which is changing and rejuvenating. That bit inadvertently, even the whole Mr. Nice Guy thing became something that fed into my ego. And that's something that came back to me badly when I had to reorganize. And so the key thing over here is, be proud of your successes, be happy about them, stay humble, but keep checking in on what is it that's feeding to your ego, and how do you get the balance right between being confident, which is really important, versus letting it get to your ego. And it's not an easy journey, and sometimes it's only in hindsight that you realize that perhaps there was a bit of ego developed, even though you think that there wasn't. And so I'll go back to the Hinduism part over there. Keep reminding yourself that ego is bad. Have the conviction, have the confidence to go out there, but keep yourself in check. And I think partly here, speaking to your parents, speaking to people who are outside the industry, speaking to other people, normal people, is always important when you're in the finance world, to keep your ego in check and remember that ultimately you're just a small part of the big, big, big universe. Alpesh?
Yeah, a very good point on this. I've got a slide. Okay, I've got a slide I've got to show people on this because I think the slide explains it a little bit better. The ego thing and how to get the right balance. The research shows men tend to be somewhat overconfident and more arrogant. And I'm going, as the Prime Minister would say, I'm relying on the science here. I'm being science-led. It's what the data suggests. It is a difficult balance. It is a difficult balance because sometimes people will take advantage of you and you don't want to be seen as arrogant. You think, well, I'm above this. Equally, it can be self-destructive. And I don't think any of us get it right all the time. Either way. What I would say is one of the things which might help in case you're feeling on the one side, you might be feeling battered and bruised and thought, well, I need to develop a bit more confidence and a bit more self-pride and a bit more knowing my worth. Or if you're on the side where you think, hey, listen, everything I touch just turns to gold. Again, I'm going to give a plug out to some of the great things we've done on City Hindu's website on this. We've done a whole bunch of interviews with people, the great and the good, you might say, but actually not just the great and the good, the normal as well. People we called it the elevator. Some of you will know this. I suggest you watch some of these. You will see with humility how, for instance, in the case of Lord Popper, a refugee into this country, and there are people who've got the right to be arrogant. They have succeeded time and time again. But actually, you'll see the resilience that was needed, both in their careers, the obstacles that were thrown in their way. And so even getting to the top, it required that ability to have that right balance. There wasn't just, oh, well, I'm at the bottom, so I'll treat myself like rubbish. Equally, there wasn't that, well, I'm going to be somebody someday either. And it's just trying to get that judgment. And sometimes we need to be a bit more arrogant, and sometimes we need to be a hell of a lot less arrogant. And what I'd say, if you look at some of the videos that we've done on this, you'll see how people have managed to have to build themselves up at times. And at other times, as the saying goes, pride comes before a fall. The pride has let them down, and you'll hear both sides of those stories and hopefully help you get that balance right for yourself as well.
Thank you, Alpesh. So, point 5, brief interlude. We won't spend too long on this because we have got questions on the rejuvenation part, and there Alpesh and I can both speak to it. So very brief on the mentors. And I've talked about this before, which is we tend to be a bit shy in our community to look for mentors and to get that external guidance. We want to build everything ourselves. But my key bit over here is why try to reinvent the wheel? There are people, Alpesh talked about Lord Popper, but in more micro ways, even Alpesh, myself, we've all been through our own ups and downs of lives, of careers, on the spiritual journey. And therefore, why not benefit from people who've been there, done that, and seen some of it? You're just making life much harder by not doing so. And certainly mentorship comes from all over the place. It doesn't have to be the traditional Indian way of seeking out one guru who leads you through life. Mentorship comes from everywhere. I was learning things from my PA, I was learning things from my analysts, I was learning things from my bosses who've been in the business forever. So everybody whose life journey has been different to yours might have solutions to issues that you have. It might not be exactly the same issue that you're going through, but they will have seen something else which is like that. And therefore, how did they maneuver through that? And if you think about Hinduism, again, it's classic. Think about the Mahabharata. If Arjun didn't have Krishna's guidance, how different would that have been? If Ram didn't have Vashisht or Vishwamitra or Agastya, how different would his journey have been? And therefore, both on the spiritual path, but also on the material part, it is very important to keep surrounding yourself with experience and picking people's brains on how to get through life. The very word guru, of course, comes from Hinduism, and I think that's something that I keep telling people to do. Today, I continue to benefit from the mentors I developed in my PwC days in my Hamilton Lane decade, which I quit last year, but also other people around the world. Alpesh is a mentor to me, as are other people who I've met through the City Hindu Network. And so I'd really encourage you to keep talking to everybody, and not just in our community, but broadly, to develop people who've had very different life experiences, who've had tough life experiences, who've had successful life experiences. There is so much to learn from everybody. Alpesh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. On that issue of mentorship, let me share with you something which, again, you've touched upon it, has helped me as a mentor, because the mentor doesn't have to be, like you said, the individuals. Equanimity, again, to quote from the Bhagavad Gita, perform all thy actions with mind concentrated on the divine, renouncing attachment, looking upon success and failure with an equal eye. Spirituality implies equanimity. This is something we often forget. I mean, particularly exam times, but even just in our careers. The people I've seen succeed the most were the ones which actually had a sense of detachment. Don't get me wrong, they had passion for the results, but when the bad things happened, it didn't destroy them. Let me put it another way. And it touches upon the last point about ego. I used to clean toilets. Some people don't like me mentioning that for some reason, but anyway, I used to clean toilets. Leaders are disciplined. I remember when I was cleaning toilets, I used to say I'd be the best goddamn toilet cleaner in the world, and I can tell you, I think I would be. This is somebody who's written books published by the Financial Times. I would argue I've got reason to be arrogant about it all, but whatever it is that I was doing, I was bloody good at it. Whether it was writing international books for the FT or cleaning those toilets, I think there's a sense that we often think that we have to be at a certain level or a certain way before we can ask for advice on something, or that we have to create some kind of Instagram image that we're all, everything's wonderful. Nope, used to clean toilets. For those who are going through a tough time in their careers right now, and there'll be many of them doing it, and you touched upon the Gita, and I'll mention this, one of the most useful phrases, actually, if I can combine the Gita and the Bible, the Gita in itself, that ability to have the calm in a storm, or as the Bible puts it, this too shall come to pass. And I'm sure there's not a single person on this webinar who isn't going through difficult times, whether professional or personal, certainly at this COVID time. And that in itself, because our mentors aren't always accessible. We're not going to be able to meet them right now. We're not all going to be able to have a sit down with a coffee and whatever else, but our mentorship can come through different channels, and that's what we wanted to do with City Hindus, to make sure it came through a channel like that. And like I said, looking at things in a different way, just to get a different perspective. I won't go into all of that element and that explanation, but again, reaching back to faith can be a way of uplifting yourself. It isn't just the individual, but it is knowing your own power. And to some extent, that's what Krishna was telling Arjun to have and leading him. That was to believe in your own abilities. Nowadays, we rely on Anthony Robbins to tell us our own abilities. There was a time when we read books like the Gita to find that as well. So just imagine the rich heritage and the army of individuals going through the same things you're going through, relying on the same sources to lift themselves up, and have proven to do it time and time again, which is another way of saying you are not alone. And one of the reasons why we do this in City Hindus Network as well. Over to you, Tarang.
Thank you, Alpesh. I saw you put the King Solomon story of this too shall pass next to Krishna and Arjun. I thought you would claim that was us.
I thought I'd better own up. Yeah, you know the source of it.
All right, very good. So last point, and this is one where, particularly because of questions that Ekta and Nish had last time, and I think we should have probably foreseen some of that given COVID. Alpesh and I thought we'd spend 10 or 15 minutes on this to really finish off, which is learning, trying, and rejuvenating. Now, whether it's something that you've on purpose wanted to do, quit and started your own business, or because COVID has hit you, or motherhood and it's hard to go back full time, or other reasons, Alpesh and I certainly have been both through those kind of journeys, and we can share some lessons and thoughts around that. But certainly, again, reach out to us, and we're very happy to help you talk through how we dealt with some of the emotions, which more than the materialism, more than anything else, it's the emotional journey which is the hardest when you go through this sort of this sort of thing. Let me kick off by quoting the Bhagavad Gita again, chapter 9, verse 8. Curving back within myself, I create again and again. So this is Krishna saying, curving back within myself, I create again and again. And so let's pause on that for a second. If God himself, herself, in this particular version, himself as Krishna, says that they rejuvenate themselves, they start over. You all probably know the Hindu theories around the world creation and destroying, which is we go through yugas which come and go and come and go, and therefore everything is temporary, and everything gets built just to be destroyed, just to restart again and rebuild and redestroy and rebuild. And frankly, that's how life goes. I mean, I think a few of us, particularly early in our careers, start to think that life is linear. And it's when that first shock comes to you that you struggle to believe that it's not linear. And so there is a little bit of that religious part, which for me personally helps me through that journey. And every time I go through my down days, I start thinking about that again, which is, this is just nature. Up and down is meant to be nature. And the key bit that us as humans have to do, as the gods had to do, is to fight through those difficult times. Jesus' journey wasn't easy. Muhammad's journey wasn't easy. None of the Hindu gods had an easy journey. Ram's banvas for 14 years wasn't easy. Krishna had to pick some sides. He had to face karma himself after the Mahabharata. None of that was easy. So again and again, we see stories where even the very great people have not had easy stories. In fact, the great people don't have easy stories. And therefore, if you find yourself in a place where you think, oh my God, my story's just got so much more complicated, that is helping you build towards your greatness. And think very much about what can you do for other people through the journey that you yourself are going through. So last year, after almost a decade at Hamilton Lane and having, running their fund investment business in Europe on a day-to-day basis and putting out $9 to $11 billion every year and all of that, having got very used to that sort of lifestyle, when life hit me, I frankly went through a very difficult divorce. I had to step back and focus on my personal issues. And that became the seed of my business. As I went through that volatility in my personal life, I started my own business because I couldn't focus on something full-time. I wanted to do something that worked around my life at the time. And I became a forced entrepreneur. And the journey was extremely tough, to forget about what I was used to in the past, to thinking about how do I develop new business, how do I monetize the contacts I have, how do I monetize the knowledge I have, and how do I go there and start again from scratch. And that was an extremely difficult, extremely painful journey, not just for myself, but for my family around me. That was a really tough journey. And what I can tell you is it gets easier. You get more and more used to dealing with your emotions. You also get more and more used to figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And in the entrepreneurial world, a lot of it, again, use the mentors, but a lot of it is also your own trial and error. Listen to people, try something, it may work, it may not work, try something else. You might need to define success very differently. In the first year or two of your own business, it might not be super booming. And so what is success? Do you define it through intermediate milestones? So I had to think very much, if I hit X by period Y, that will be success. If I don't hit it, I rethink about why didn't that work? What can I do differently? How can I reapproach that problem in a different way? Or am I asking the wrong question? And so that success for me became all of that, answering that. And remember, folks, success is also a journey. It's a bit like enlightenment. Success is not a destination, it is a journey. And therefore, there is no thing as the perfect success. And so a lot of it is to keep trying, keep being successful in different ways, failing in different ways, and picking it up and leading to a better outcome each time. After all, folks, life is a combination of experiences. We sometimes think of life as material success, and we need to sometimes step back and just remind ourselves that life is actually success measured in so many different ways. And so what else matters? And so for me, both while I was going through my initial phases of the business and during COVID, I was super lucky that my parents had come over from India and they were with us. Unexpectedly, they were locked down with us throughout COVID. They were hoping to go back to India earlier this year, but they couldn't. But the very good side about that, about the early phases of my business and COVID, was having my parental support, which I became super grateful for. A bit like Alpesh, just having the flexibility of not having to travel into town every day meant that I had more time to go cycling. And so Alpesh and I both look much skinnier than we did 6 months ago. And that was a real blessing for ourselves.
Can you imagine how bad I did look?
The clean air around us, going for walks, spending time distance picnicking with some friends who we hadn't seen in a while, but they were neighbors of ours. And so all of that really built into what success looked like. And none of this is to give away from the material side, by the way. I am still working very hard to continue to make my business work during COVID. I've been fortunate in that some of my previous karma of being a good person has today fed back into people giving me business to do. But I'm also learning along the way. And the key bit there is, again, going back to the Bhagavad Gita, is to remember that this is your tough times are temporary. Your business is starting are temporary. If nobody's hiring you, then you have to start something on your own. Keep applying for jobs, but start something on your own as well. And remember that you have to keep going through that journey. And that journey is what builds you as a human being. It what defines your character in the long term. It's what you'll be able to use to impart your knowledge, your experience to help other people later on in life. And that for me is something I constantly keep reminding myself, which is my difficulties are going to be a learning for somebody else. And if I can make somebody else's life even 5% easier in the future, that to me is success. And so let me finish before I hand over to Alpesh with again a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 14. When you go through a difficult time, just remember what Krishna says in the Gita, which is feelings of hot and cold, pleasure and pain are caused by contact of the senses with their objects. They come and go, but never lasting long. You must accept them. Alpesh.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Tarang. And what I want to share with people just on that point in terms of achieving some of that success, well, before I go to the spiritual, let me just go to the material first. The material part, if you are looking at pivoting in your career or moving ahead, well, one of the things that you're going to find really important is how the hell do you get introduction to the right people, whether it's mentors, people to advise you in your career. And we created a whole video for this on City Hindus Network. So look, guys, don't mean to plug the website, but yes, I do. If you go to events and then you look at the entrepreneurship program, you will find there's a whole video where we've given advice on how to get introductions to people, because you're going to need to do that both in your career or if you need to pivot. Equally, if you scroll down there, if you are looking at entrepreneurship, as Tarang mentioned, you're going to want to know how do you get investment. We're both from the investment world, so we're able to comment on this with particular expertise. And we've done a video on what angel investors look for. Okay, that's it. Now, you might not be looking at any of that. You might be looking at the more important things, the broader aspects of success. For me, it's that ability to be a leader. Now, in your jobs, whatever careers you're in, if you want to move ahead, you want to move up, whatever you're going to do, turn yourself into that leader. And for me, that means giving other people purpose, giving them the autonomy and purpose. How the hell do we find that? Well, let me just very quickly show you one of the easiest ways, and it relates to what Tarang said about lifelong learning in your career. Turn yourself from being a manager. I'm sure most of you on here are managers or aspire to be managers, and turn yourself into a leader. And some of you might have seen these types of infograms before, and you know what the answers to these are, but it's not bad remembering and reminding ourselves the difference between a manager and a leader. A leader, whether you draw upon Krishna or whether you draw upon just what you're doing day to day, having that bigger purpose that you are a leader, therefore you're challenging the status quo. You're seeing an opportunity, not a problem. You're thinking long term. And whether you're going to start your own business or in your own career, the people who get ahead are the ones who behave like leaders, are the ones who are able to say to the ones above them that actually I've got a long-term solution to something. I think we've got an opportunity here. Is somebody who, like I said, behaves and hits all the leadership side of this, the right-hand side, motivates others, encourages others, fosters ideas, as opposed to, okay, that's my job, I've been doing it, why aren't I promoted? I followed all the rules, I got the necessary approvals, I was told to do this and I've done it. How come I've not got ahead? Well, because they haven't gone one step further. They haven't been able to inspire, those softer skills to join up all the dots of what we've spoken about. And has that ability to say from a moral perspective, not just I followed the rules, but from a moral perspective, I think this is right. This is what we should be doing. So he's able to look forward. And I think employers love that. Now, all of the things that we've said there, you'll find it, obviously linking it back to City Hindus, you'll find it there. You would find it all within, find that purpose, and you will get further ahead. And that's what I'd say. And that purpose might be, for me, I used the teachings of my faith to help charities to do with abduction. whatever that purpose is, whether it's in your work or outside of it, it will make you a better leader. It will help you grow and learn, as Tarang said, and will help you move forward in your career. That bigger thought, that ability to look upwards. Back to you, Tarang.
I think we're good. I'm just conscious we've tried to cover a wide range of issues over here because of the wide variety of people we had last time around. We've got a few minutes left. I wonder if we throw it open to any questions.
Yeah, are there any questions from anyone? We will make sure we put this on the website. We will, on the City Hindus website. We will also make sure we put it on social media as well. Are there any questions from anyone? Just keeping an eye out for the questions that you'd have. Let us know how you like this one, whether you'd like more career clinics, whether you'd like them to be specifically covering certain areas of careers. Let us know. And don't forget, on LinkedIn, you can connect to both of us as well if there's specific information, advice that you'd like, pointers on certain things. You've got specific questions, you can do that through LinkedIn as well, and you'll be able to find us easily on LinkedIn. If there's no questions, we've left them stunned and gobsmacked, which is good, Tarang. Then I will wrap it up. I don't think there are any other questions. Look, do give us feedback, however. Even if you don't have questions, please give us feedback how you found this. Haveen, thank you. I've answered Haveen's question. We've got another question. Haveen, can we get involved and help with the entrepreneurship now? Absolutely, Haveen. Well, we've worked together before, so you're already pre-vetted, as it were. Just send it to either send it to my email address or LinkedIn or through City Hindus Network. You'll see there's an email address there, one way or another, or just tweet us. You'll find us one way or another. You'll be able to find us, absolutely do connect up. I think you've got my email address in any event, yes, if you want to get involved with whatever we're doing on City Hindus, whether it's the entrepreneurship side or anything else, do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you and that goes out to everybody on that. So
maybe even if it's not specifically to City Hindus Network, obviously Alpesh and I both do a lot of work in entrepreneurship. Both of us have businesses which work in that segment as well. So very happy to help people. Fantastic.
If there's no one else, we will go off and, well, I'm fasting today. But otherwise, the rest of us will go off and have lunch, I'm sure. Listen, guys, I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you for supporting City Hindus Network, and thank you for supporting and being on this webinar. As I said, reach out to us, connect with us on LinkedIn as well, and ask us any questions. We want to help you progress in your careers. Send us messages, have a think, what other topics you'd like us to cover. And I want to give a big thanks to Tarang as well, who's given fantastic advice on this webinar as well. Thank you, Tarang.
Thank you, Alpesh. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for listening in.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.